What's up, people? Welcome back to the channel. So I decided just to do just some kind of open mic, just kind of discussion where I don't really have any kind of things to go with it. I'm just going to be kind of speaking off my head about kind of like certain things that I've had discussions with other people about, discussions with myself. So, like, yeah, so I'm not going to try to make the intro long. If you like what we do here, please feel free to like, to subscribe. If not, it is all cool. Let's go ahead and get into the discussion. If you read the title, this discussion is, should Yu-Gi-Oh change their reprint policy? Now, I kept it kind of just simple as reprint policy because I guess I have a bunch of different angles that I would like to go about this. And I guess a couple of the questions to represent those angles are, one of them is, should Konami, redo their reprint policy, or maybe should Konami introduce more more rarities and also responsibly put the better cards, in those rarities, so that way they could make more of them. And I guess let me go and explain myself more, because I guess like the way I said it didn't really come out exactly right. So a lot of you guys probably, well, not a lot of you, but for those of you who don't, or you do, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of other card games to where you'll have like four different rarities of like the same card. You'll pretty much have like a card will come out as like a super rare, but then the card is also available in like two other rarities, and they're all kind of exceedingly get more and more like nicer, shinier, or expensive. Like the game still has expensive cards, but like for example, a card like Kashtira Fenrir, like Fenrir, yeah. So a card like Kashtira Fenrir, like instead of Kashtira Fenrir only coming out as like an ultra rare in the in a core set, it would probably come out as like an ultra rare, and then it would have like a super rare, a secret rare, and then a starlight rare version. So like if I just use like Yu-Gi-Oh's current rarity system, it would essentially be introducing the same card but into different rarities, so that way it gives other players a chance to be able to get the cards a little more easier. So and I like the same thing could be said with other cards. Like you could do the same, same with like the pot cards. You could do the same, you could even kind of do, you could do it like I guess well, yeah, I'm gonna go back to Pokemon, to where like they will have, they will have super low rarity version of cards, and then they'll have higher rarity, like they'll have like the same cards that are super low rarity. Or I guess no, a better one would be Vanguard. Vanguard does this like a little bit better than I noticed, to where like you will have like a common version of a card, and then it'll have a bunch, it'll have like a super high, like I think it's called a SP or something. So like it'll have like different rarities, to where if you want to play budget, you could play one of one of the better decks in the format, but you just won't play all the ultra arts, and you won't play all the all like the fancy shiny stuff. It'll be like like common and rare and maybe a couple supers, but for the most part you'll still be able to play meta without having to spend like you know eight $800. One Piece, does that right now. I noticed that, One Piece is still new, so like that's not how like everything is, but One Piece does have, for example, like I run green, and I run the Supernova Wano deck, and I needed the Kinemon leader card, and I was like, oh man, it's gonna be hard to get, and I ended up getting it as a common, but it also has a ultra art, which is like $120. So it's like for me, someone who already plays a card game, and like I'm not really trying to spend a whole bunch of money, I was able to easily obtain the card I needed. It's just not the nice shiny version. I'm very tempted to go buy that nice shiny version, but there's no need for me to spend $120 to get that right now. But it's better than it's better than if that was the only version available. Like if the only version available was like, oh, like if you wanted to run the freaking if you wanted to run the Kinemon Supernova Green Wano deck, you have no choice but to go spend $120 to get this special Kinemon with you feel me? That's kind of how Yu-Gi-Oh is. Yu-Gi-Oh is like, if you want to run this certain deck, if you want to run the best deck, if you want to run this certain strategy, then you need that card, and that card is extremely expensive, and that's what really turns people off. Although it may be like a different video, I'll talk about this. I think it's gotten way better. Like I remember playing. I played Yu-Gi-Oh back when I was very young. Like when Yu-Gi-Oh first came to America, I started like playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and like when I was young, it didn't really affect me because you're just getting stuff. But I remember like when I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh after high school, like I remember like building my first competitive deck, and I think it took me three. I had a job. It took me 3 weeks, and I still didn't have everything. Like it was my I love windups, and I ended up just it took me about 3-4 weeks to get all the cards I needed to make the wind up deck like the way I wanted it, and I was still missing like Max D's. I didn't have all my Valors, and this was just because not only were cards harder to get back then, but they were just more expensive. I think like sharks were they're super rares, and they're like $15 each, like, so it's like you needed to like you needed three to to do for the deck, and then even the rats were like $10 around the time when I was getting them and stuff. So Yu-Gi-Oh kind of has always kind of had that to where, oh, you want to run this certain deck, you want to run this, you have to spend this money, and it used to be worse. Now I feel like it's gotten way better, but a lot of people kind of still feel like that it's really too expensive, and like to a certain extent they are right. Like I do understand like what they're saying. Like you want to play Kashtira, you need your three Fenrirs when they're at $70. Everyone like no one knew that was gonna get like that reprint. It was gonna crash the way it did, and they also didn't know the format was gonna be so fair. But before then, if you're trying to play Kashtira, you had to spend $70 each. You're spending $210 just off the bat just for 3 cards, and that's what really turns people off of Yu-Gi-Oh, because then the other stuff starts to go up. Then you have to pay $25 for your Kashtira unicorns, and it kind of turns and it kind of makes people feel like, wow, like I either spend a whole bunch of money or I have to play Rogue. And even if I play Rogue, I still might need pot of this, or I might need this hand trap, or I might need this side deck card, and those are gonna cost me money. So something something that I don't know, something that I really thought about would, if Konami would reprint these cards in more rarity similar to these other card games, like would that immediately kind of solve like the issue? Like I understand maybe some people wouldn't be 100% okay with it. Even right now as I'm talking about it, it's something that I kind of had in my head, but even I'm kind of like I'm very little like Yugi what's the term? Yugi boomer about it, to where I'm like, well, I kind of that's kind of how Yu-Gi-Oh's always been, so like I don't know, I'm not like 100% just like, yeah, let's go make the change, but at the same time, I would want it to be easier for, like, not only myself but for other people to be able to play some of these decks, because for me, like, I choose to play, you know, I I choose to play more like, maybe tier 1.5 rogue tier 2 strategies right now. Like I'm essentially kind of chosen to play those decks right now, but there's some people who kind of play that because they have no choice. Like they don't want to sit there and for example, if you're in tier element format, you're like, okay, well, at the height of tier element format, some of those decks, they were, if you looked up, on like there's certain websites would have like the deck list and how much it was worth. Some of those were like six, seven, eight, almost $900 decks, and like some people maybe don't feel fully comfortable dropping that kind of money. Although just people have different ways of getting ready for Yu-Gi-Oh. Me personally, I have a lot of cards that I kind of buy ahead of time. Like years. Certain hand traps, certain things that I like really hold on to, so I don't have to rebuy them. But there's some people who don't play Yu-Gi-Oh like that. Some people, they get a deck, they sell the whole deck, and then they get a new deck. Maybe they keep like some certain pot cards to transfer over, but then if they choose to play a different deck, they'll sell those pot cards, and then when they choose to play a deck that needs them again, they'll have to rebuy them. So there's some people that feel like, damn, man, I don't want to keep up with that. I mean, I want to sit there and keep up with all this and that, but they still want to play Yu-Gi-Oh. And I think those people would benefit a lot from something like that, to where you don't have to spend so much money, And if you're someone who has a job, it'd be easier for you to go ahead and keep up with the meta, be able to play all those decks. And also on the flip side, if you're someone who's newer getting into the game, it makes it easier for you to get your hands on those cards to be able to play those strategies and not be forced to, like, okay, well, I have to play this, or well, like, I'm just gonna play this for now. It's like it makes you feel more comfortable about going into some of these cards. So I'm not saying it would solve all the problems, but it'd be very interesting if Yu-Gi-Oh would try to explore something like that. Because like it would just yeah, because I don't want to say it'll solve the problem, but like, I guess, like, there would be it would be easier for a lot of people to enjoy the game. Because, like, maybe there's some people who feel like, okay, well, like, I'm gonna play branded because that's like the best deck that I could afford. But in reality, they would love to play, like, they want to play, like, let's just say Cashier. Like, they really want to play Cashier, but it's like, that's just way too expensive. So I'm just gonna force myself to play like branded. And if we were to introduce this, like, if we were to introduce something like this, and like those people who want to kind of branch out, it'd be easier for them. And then people who are on the outside that are like, I don't, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh and it's too expensive. They would see how it's like, okay, well, I no longer have to drop $600 to jump in and play, Yu-Gi-Oh. I could just, come in and maybe spend like 200, to get like a top tier deck. Like, I think that's something that people really want out of Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, people don't want to come in and spend, because like Yu-Gi-Oh has a huge learning curve. So it's like, unless you're like super gifted, or you're like super ready, or you're like, you remember everything, even if you spend all the money to get everything you need, it is easy to get just sauced by someone who's just playing something regular, who knows how to play around everything, just because you can't properly interact. So it's a game to where it's like, spending all that money and you're just coming in just to get smacked and have this big, like, learning curve, keeps another set of people away from the game. And like, those demographic people can maybe want to come back and be like, all right, I don't have to spend so much money, I don't have to go through all this, let's go ahead and like play some Yu-Gi-Oh. All right, guys, that's pretty much like my thoughts, like, for that one situation. The situation, I would like them to like introduce it, like, what they like introduce, like, the same card but in different rarities, just to make the card easier and more accessible. That